right, moving on, American President Donald Trump's televised address from the White House was on theme lavish on self-praise and a promise of better things to come for America. But in a festive backdrop of Christmas trees, the Republican leader began his speech in classic Trump style, slamming his Democratic predecessor, Joe Biden.
Good evening, America. 11 months ago, I inherited a mess, and I'm fixing it. When I took office, inflation was the worst in 48 years, and some would say in the history of our country, which caused prices to be higher than ever before, making life unaffordable for millions and millions of Americans.
Now, much of Trump's speech has focused on promising Americans an economic boom. The American leader spoke at length about tariffs, how they've been a success under his ongoing leadership. His comments come at a stage when several deals are still under works, especially with major South Asian players like India and China.
Much of this success has been accomplished by tariffs. My favorite word, tariffs, which for many decades have been used successfully by other countries against us, but not anymore. Companies know that if they build in America, there are no tariffs, and that's why they're coming home to the USA in record numbers. They're building factories and plants at levels we haven't seen, AI, automobiles. We're doing what nobody thought was even possible, not even remotely possible.
Now, Donald Trump's focus on economy mirrors everything that he promised during the presidential campaign. But the speech also comes at a time when polls show his popularity among American voters steadily declining. It is the president's handling of economy that has been the single largest trigger behind his falling popularity ratings. The speech was an important one for Donald Trump, remember, especially because it comes at a time when the Republican camp is concerned about the upcoming midterm elections. The American president has touted big success in bringing down the cost of living and creating more jobs. But how much of that has really happened on ground is the question. All right, let me go across to our correspondent, Susan Tehrani. She's joining us live from New York. Susan, big promises that have been made by President Donald Trump. Of course, crucial time to address Americans as, the president and Republicans are looking at the midterm elections. But how much of his speech has been brought by Americans? How much of that has been concerning, has been assuring for Americans?
Yeah, that's the main point here that, President Trump last night, he came in with receipts. He had graphs and bars and images of how great his economic policies have been. And while that may be true on a macro level, for everyday Americans, they're just not feeling it. And unless and until Americans feel it, no matter what officials in Washington, D.C. say, it's just not going to move the needle. It's not going to move the needle in the public supporting him because of his policies. And, telling them that they have to wait and the best is yet to come. Well, certain segment of the population, notably his supporters, will buy that. But there are many Americans who went to the polls, single issue voters, that voted on affordability and the economy. And just the reality is that they have not seen that, as I mentioned, in their everyday lives. Now, I will say, while that speech was a familiar playbook from, blaming the previous administration and having a campaign-style communication tone to it, it really also highlights that it seems the president is frustrated. 2 points on the border, he's receiving good numbers. Americans are happy with the way he's been dealing with illegal migration. And also, I think a part of that speech that most Americans supported was the dividend that he plans to give to U.S. soldiers before the year end. But other than that, on the issue of affordability and economy, it doesn't matter what he says. People have to feel it in their pocketbooks, notably around holiday season.
Now, Susan, that is something also that Susie Wiles reportedly said to Vanity Fair, that he needs to talk about affordability more. But let's wait and watch how this progresses for the Republicans as well as Donald Trump. Thank you very much for joining us and getting us the latest from America.